Jordan Bryngelson is a lifelong Lowcountry resident who has over 20 years of experience in infrastructure development. He wants to bring that experience to Mount Pleasant Town Council if elected council member. I talked one-on-one with Jordan about why he's running for Mount Pleasant Town Council for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jordan Bryngelson, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You are, as you said on your Facebook page, a lifelong Lowcountry resident with over 20 years of experience in infrastructure development. So tell me, Jordan, why, obviously, because you just mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that you are now a candidate for the open seat for Mount Pleasant Town Council, and that particular election comes up March 25th. So why Mount Pleasant Town Council? Why you?
I like being part of the community. Being on the infrastructure side, I feel like I've helped build a lot of community, roads, bridges, water, sewer, storm drain, those kind of things, the stuff that make it so people and businesses can be in places. And I've always been part of my community. And I thought, what a good opportunity if I could take some of my real world skill set and apply that to local government. And I think, town council especially is really where the rubber meets the road. You actually get to do something that, affects your neighbor in a positive way, or maybe if you do your job poorly, it affects them in a negative way. But it's different than these other seats that where, they're off making decisions and doing things that you don't necessarily feel. But when you talk about the things that happen on town council, that directly affects everyone's quality of life.
What exactly is the quality of life right now in the town of Mount Pleasant?
I would say, in general, a lot of people like to be negative, but I'm a positive guy. Mount Pleasant's a great place. If it wasn't, you wouldn't have people beating down the doors to try and move here and paying the really high prices for homes and businesses trying to be here. I mean, there's a lot of good in Mount Pleasant. But how do we take good and turn it into great? How do we do some stuff that plans for the future instead of just for tomorrow? And I'd like to be part of that. I mean, having been in the Lowcountry my entire life, you want to feel like you give back, that you help do something, that you help move the needle a little bit.
Well, let me ask you this. What are the projects currently on Mount Pleasant Town Council that they're planning for the future versus the plans that they're planning for tomorrow?
Well, man, I don't know if I could pick a specific project and tear it apart like that, because honestly, I'm not on Mount Pleasant Town Council, so I don't want to say, oh, this specific project, or there was a lot of talk about the town center and a potential redevelopment of that, and it's easy from the outside looking in to try and say, oh, this is the right way, or this is the wrong way, or this is what needs to happen. But you only have very limited information, and I'm aware of that. Maybe I have a little bit more information than your common lay person, because to some degree that's my world. I'm not a developer. I work like on pre-construction, so I take projects from concept through to contract. So I'm pricing them, putting them together, building the teams and stuff like that. So I'm not a developer like Hallmark Channel wants to paint the bad developer. I'm not that guy. I'm really the one that figures out how to make the project happen. But also being part of that, you see how what good development looks like, and what some stuff that I like the whole idea of urban infill and redoing, redeveloping some areas, because you've got to have some density in some places. You can't have all urban sprawl, and it's great to have single family neighborhoods. I think those are important, and that's a good piece. People obviously, want to have their own home and have their yard, and that's kind of the American dream. But at the same time, density solves a lot of problems when you talk about maintenance and stormwater runoff. If you can have a lot less roof space and a lot less hardscape and more people in an area, it's not right for everywhere, but select areas, I think it's a good move, and that helps save on some of the cost of living. It's crazy expensive to live in Mount Pleasant. We all know this now. And we're squeezing out school teachers and firefighters and policemen from being able to live in the community that they actually work in.
Well, let me ask you this, Dan. What's actually ideal for Mount Pleasant from your perspective? Is it affordable housing? Is it attainable housing? Or is it workforce housing?
I like the idea of a workforce housing. They put a lot of different labels on it to try and figure out how to make people feel good about it. To me, workforce housing is housing that's set aside with some special breaks for school teachers, for first responders, for firefighters, for those type of people that are literally community servants. Maybe they're government employees. They're working in the town, and just the way that it shakes out, those jobs just don't have the same income as maybe some other jobs. And if your kid can see their school teacher in the grocery store after school, there's a value to that.
And let me ask you, so with those people that you just mentioned, the police officers, the firefighters, and of course teachers, what type of jobs will be ideal for Mount Pleasant in the future?
Um, I, I don't know. I'm not sure where you're going to with that question. I mean, those jobs aren't getting outsourced. You're never going to outsource first responders. I mean, those are boots on the ground jobs. So you have to have those. I mean, they're always going to be a necessity to make the community work.
A better question is this: with the growth that's going on in Mount Pleasant right now, what type of jobs do Mount Pleasant need to keep up with the growth in the future?
Oh wow, yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that there's a lot of like uh, literally commercial. Sorry, I got another call coming in. It's trying to block me out.
Oh, no worries.
You got a lot of commercial growth here, and a lot of businesses. When you're talking about really like corporate level, white collar type businesses, a lot of financial providers, a lot of tech industry. I mean, there's a lot of tech growth out the Daniel Island area and that Clements Ferry corridor. You got big tech growth out there. I think with Boeing being here and Volvo, even though those aren't in Mount Pleasant, those are economic engines that drive growth in a different way. You look at like the history of Charleston, and having been here my whole life, we've never really had big international money pumping into the Charleston economy the way that we have transitioned over probably in the last 8 to 10 years, where you have a lot of foreign, you know when I say foreign, not necessarily overseas,
Right.
but a lot of investment from way outside of the Tri County area, way outside of South Carolina.
What
I,
would be
I
that?
will say something that I don't love, and this has been a hot button issue. I don't think that the light industrial stuff in Mount Pleasant is the right move. I just don't think that fits with the community, and been some push to grow some of that light industrial business here, and I think that changes the fabric of the community when you do those kind of things. It's just a different type of business.
Where are they pushing this light industrial areas in Mount Pleasant?
You've got Clements Ferry, which has like a business park, and there's area that's set aside for it. That makes sense to approve new stuff. I mean, there's a hot button sort of light industrial site inside Carolina Park, and I know that's got a lot of North Mount Pleasant very very up in arms over that. And that's an outside big capital group that's come in and built that, and it's zoned for it. So they haven't done anything wrong. They're to the letter of the zoning or to the letter of the law doing what they're allowed to do, and you can't demonize a business for it. But I don't think that's. I think when you're talking about putting truck traffic and things like that, it just changes the community a little bit. To have that right across from like a retirement community, that might not have been the best planning.
Yes, sir. And I want to get back to that in just a second. But where else in Mount Pleasant can that light industrial work and be effective for the next 5 to 10 years?
I think you've got to block off land. I mean, if you go out 41 where you've got a lot more open space, it makes more sense to push it out that direction. Or as you tie back into Clements Ferry, they already have a lot of light industrial. It should be something that's in sectors, and we got to think about the truck traffic that it puts on the road, because heavy duty tractor trailers are different than your everyday car traffic. And obviously those guys are out there doing a job, and that serves a purpose. So I'm not saying that to demonize anyone or any business, but planting stuff in blocks, so that you don't have kids playing in the street where tractor trailers are driving through. I think that's good for everybody.
Right down the street here in Somerville, obviously they have the Volvo Car Parkway and all these other interchanges. Would that be effective in Mount Pleasant if you bring that type of business in that area?
If I don't know that there's the real estate for it, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I grew up in Somerville, so I know that area very well. That's my hometown. I lived in Somerville, you know, my whole life and played football for Coach McKissick. So, and they've done some good things there. Somerville's had its whole share of growing pains for sure, and trying to find its identity. And it's been interesting to see how much that Nexton area has grown over there, and an area that, I mean, we didn't even used to call that Somerville. Um, and I was like, they get that on their address now. Um, but but they've done some smart planning with Nexton. I mean, that's a beautiful community and how that's built out. And I think that's really created a lot of added value to an area that was not the best area. I mean, they did a good job of coming in and taking raw property and developing that in a positive way. You've got an interstate exit coming back, that next an interchange that comes there, and you're able to dump cars right onto the road rather than dumping them on secondary roads. There's some good things that they've done there. And it'd be you can't think that you have all the answers yourself. You got to go around and look other places. Hey, what works? Other places where they've done a trial run, and really be able to look at that and say, okay, how do we apply that back to us?
I know you're not on town council yet, but what study would you do on that particular part of Mount Pleasant if you were to put some sort of light industrial businesses in that area?
Man, I'll tell you, I don't know that I have a great answer for that. I really have to dig down in to the depths of things and kind of really figure out like the master zoning plans and how all those things work, and try and get together with the other people that are on council, because I'm literally just one vote. So I think it's unfair to sit here and say I'm going to do these things and I'm going to make this happen and I'm going to do this. I mean, I can tell you I'm going to bring good ideas to the table, and I'm going to have a good vision and some good real world experience. And I'm a good team builder, and I enjoy working with other people. And just because you might not have the exact same idea as me doesn't mean I'm going to write you off. So I think I can come in there and be effective. But I think it would be premature for me to say, Quintin, I have this list of 5 things that I'm going to walk in the door and accomplish, because I don't know that I can accomplish those things quite yet. But I know that I can come in and be a good team player, and I know that the community is my first priority, and being a good and having good constituent service. I really think people want to be able to elect someone that is going to be responsive to them, somebody that really can actually answer questions and is available. So one thing that I have pushed as a campaign promise, and I will follow through on, is I'm going to have a regular newsletter that I put out to everyone. And at the same time, I have a regular podcast, like a coffee with a councilman, maybe do that every 2 weeks or once a month, maybe starting out. But once it starts to pick up a little speed, probably adding some more and bringing some different people from around the community and some different people from, with inside city government, talk about the things that are happening that are relevant, and have it be real tangible, so people can say, oh yeah, okay, I know about this, because transparency is important. I kind of came up with this little slogan in the campaign where I say, I'm a front porch conversations guy, not a backroom deals guy.
Is the town of Mount Pleasant transparent in your mind?
You're never going to have full transparency. That's the real facts of it. I think that there's definitely some things that have happened here that are probably very behind closed doors. There's also some things that I think there's a perception that they've happened behind closed doors, or some deals that are cooked that I don't think that that's probably actually accurate. There people are trying to do a good job out here, so I don't think it's my place to come in here and tear people down. But I know how I operate, and I'm a pretty open book, and I'm going to be available. I'm going to answer phone calls and return phone calls. And I mean, quite frankly, I planned on taking my Mount Pleasant Town Council salary and hiring another person just to help out part time, to be able to respond back to things and make sure that we're efficient and working back for the people. That's literally just taking the people's tax dollars and using it to help them out.
Speaking of the people, and you talk obviously about the community, has Mount Pleasant been able to find its identity through all the growth and infrastructure and traffic?
I think you got a little bit of two identities in Mount Pleasant. And those two identities are sort of dueling it out. You've got the old Mount Pleasant area with the old village and Ion, and I mean you can appreciate this to some degree from coming from Somerville, and then you've got the North Mount Pleasant area, and that place that didn't even used to exist. I can remember when Charleston National. I mean, I thought that was awe and awe. Like that was the end. That's literally the end of the world. My sister was dating a guy who she's now married to, and we tease her and say, "Is he hiding from the police? Like he lives all the way out there in Charleston National." And now Charleston National's just sort of right in the center of things. And so you've had a tremendous amount of growth, and so to say that Mount Pleasant is one cohesive thing, I think that's not true. The North Mount Pleasant area, they're definitely grasping for some representation up there. I met with a group of concerned citizens the other week just to talk about their concerns, and they feel like that town council's very very heavy to the old area of Mount Pleasant and pays more attention to their needs than it does North Mount Pleasant. And they're really wanting to get somebody on there that represents them or communicates with them. And I'm not playing any favorites. I got people all over the town of Mount Pleasant, all over the Lowcountry that I enjoy working with and have good relationships with. And so it doesn't matter to me if you're an old village person or if you're a North Mount Pleasant person. You should get the same amount of service.
And I love both areas. On a personal note, I know I never inject my opinion, but I used to work out there in North Mount Pleasant from 2020 on up to 2023. Love it there, and I always
Yeah.
go to the old villages. Great place as well. So let me ask you this: what are the old villages' needs and wants versus the North Mount Pleasant needs and wants?
Well, I think Old Village is saying, "Hey, we're in a good place here. Don't mess with us too much, and don't encroach on us." Sim Creek, maybe they're like, Sim Creek, calm down just a little bit, But I think that Old Village area is pretty set. There's not a whole lot of new stuff going on over there. They've got a few little pocket lots and some development and things. But by and large, they don't have huge issues. I mean, they've got some stormwater issues, and the town has tried to address some of those, and they've got several different projects coming up to handle those things. And those are slow, challenging projects, truthfully. And there's a lot of design behind that. But the North Mount Pleasant area, I think, is really trying to find an identity and make sure that they're not the sort of the whipping boy for the rest of Mount Pleasant. As I talked to North Mount Pleasant residents, they had some real concerns about the airport and is it going to expand and where they're going to put workforce housing and how that affects their property value or their community or their backyard. And okay, if they start zoning light industrial out there, they got a lot more challenges because there's a lot more. The velocity of growth out there is much higher, so they're facing so many different things versus the old area of Mount Pleasant just isn't quite moving at the same speed anymore.
Should that particular area be zoned for light industrial?
I really don't think so. I just don't. I don't. If you want to make an industrial park, I mean, this is really getting to the end of the town of Mount Pleasant. But if you wanted to make an industrial park further down 17, where you have a block of property, and you do it as an internal thing, that's you got to look at how that throws traffic because really, like, the traffic coming onto 526 is a bear. Well, then you don't want to run that traffic back through 17 back to the big bridge. I mean, that's a challenging piece. I just don't see. I see Mount Pleasant and the demographic of Mount Pleasant as being much more an area that's retail, that's commercial, that's businesses, that's office places and a lot of residential and not a whole lot of industrial. If you want to have industrial, that should be back towards the port where you have rail access and things like that, so we can take some of that traffic off the road. And that's working with Charleston County as a whole and working with the Lowcountry as a whole, because sometimes, you got to think bigger than just the town, just your backyard. You got to think, how do we fit into the larger piece of the puzzle of the Lowcountry, and how do we all help each other out?
So when well, let me ask you this then: what will be the demographics of Mount Pleasant as a whole in 5 to 10 years with all this growth and all of these businesses?
I don't know. I tell you, y- I don't love gentrification. I think that I think Mount Pleasant has some great pieces and some great areas to it. And as you grow and change, you don't want to wash away that culture. Like, you don't want to wash away the things that give something its own certain flavor and character. Um, and we've done that to some degree, but honestly, as you look around some of the older neighborhoods in Mount Pleasant, I mean, in that central section, you still got a good pocket of good good working class people that are there, that have been there for a long time, and and you got to look at from the other side. They've come out really good in all of this. They might have been there for a little bit of time, and they've got a great little house, and that house has continued to increase in value and increase in value. And at some point in time, if they decide to cash out, their life has changed in a major, major way. So there's pluses and minuses to both sides.
So then, Jordan, how do we protect 10 miles, 6 miles, Snowden, Hamlin?
If I knew all those answers, I'd probably be in a yacht down in the Caribbean. I'd call you up and say, Quintin, you want to come do the interview down here? That's the age old question, right? Like, how do you hold everybody's everything in balance? And there's no perfect answer to it, but I do think that urban sprawl is the enemy to that. When you talk about gigantic neighborhoods and you talk about 400, 500 rooftops, and the stormwater runoff and the sewer capacity and the water capacity and all the lines that have to go there, all the road work that has to go in, and then that becomes maintenance for the town. That's that kind of stuff right there is where I like to say, okay, we got to pick some areas and say, okay, people are coming here. We can't think that we're really going to build walls and keep people out. That's not realistic. Okay, how do we have some dense areas and at the same time not encroach on the rural areas to wipe out all those heirs properties and things like that. We got to have some density and encourage some density. And I think that's an ugly word a lot of times, but when you think about one rooftop that has many people underneath it. And I'm not talking about the sprawling apartment complexes. I'm talking about actual, like, multi-use buildings, where you've got commercial on the bottom and maybe retail on the bottom, or maybe you've got hotels on the bottom and you got residential condos up above. That starts to become a smart move in the right place. And where does that happen? What does that look like? Obviously you're not going to stick that. You don't want some shiny building down there on Shim Creek or something like that. That's going to change the fabric of that community. But there's other areas where things like that might fit, and then that relieves some of the pressure on, like you said, once you get out 6 Mile and you get out Snowden, like, those people don't want to be wiped off the face of the map.
Hey, yes, sir. I talked to a lot of them, and they would actually agree with you. So, in order to try to protect those communities and other communities in Mount Pleasant, where exactly would density be ideal in the town of Mount Pleasant right now?
I would say when you're talking about the redevelopment of town center, uh, that's an area that's already very commercialized. It's got good access. You have good road access. You've got Hungry Neck Boulevard not far from there. You could extend Hungry Neck out to tie right into town center, so that if you're making a dense area, and you keep the commercial piece. I think town center is a draw and brings people in from all across the Lowcountry, and that's sales tax dollars, and that's money spent right here in our community. And they're spending money, and we're getting that hospitality tax and those things like that. Those are engines. That's dollars coming in from outside, so those are always good things. But if you start to make density there, I don't think you're changing the shape of that area in the same way as if you say we're going to zone density out 6 Mile Road. Like that becomes crazy, and the amount of infrastructure you have to put in to handle that doesn't make good sense. But you already have the Hungry Neck extension there, and you could put an exit ramp or tie back into that where you've got cars coming straight in and going straight back out instead of dumping them right on 17. You could do some smart things there. I might catch a black eye or two for saying that, but I shoot straight. I mean, you gotta come up with some creative ideas.
Roundabouts?
Roundabouts are great tools for traffic. They keep things flowing, and uh, done right, they can be really good tools.
Tools. I know you got to wrap it up, but let me ask you quickly because I wanted to go back to Old Village really quick. What should be the ideal design plan for stormwater in that particular area?
That's a challenging thing. You're right there on the water. Your groundwater table is, I mean, maybe 2 feet on a good day. There's no perfect solution to the stormwater runoff there. Some of the things they've done down in Charleston on the crosstown where they've got that the whole redo. I mean, that's a major stormwater improvement. This finally coming together as they finish out the big pump station there. You see that in between the twin bridges. You might end up having to do something like that, but at the same time, um, you do still have a lot of green space within Old Village, and so it doesn't really push the same amount of runoff. And I think protecting that green space and protecting the charm of that area is, that's important. That's something that's the fabric of Mount Pleasant. And when you walk through and you see the historical areas, you go out to Pitt Street Bridge, and they're doing a cool redo on Pitt Street Bridge, and I mean, spend my tax dollars on something that's gonna be a good thing for everybody. Like I like that idea, instead of on a little pet project for somebody. So
And let me get back to something else too. Obviously, and we talk about Old Village. Obviously, there's a lot of homes there, and there's property values and whatnot attached to all of that. So, where can we have right now? Because all these people are coming into Mount Pleasant day by day. Where exactly can you put single family homes?
there's not a lot of space in Old Village to stick more single family homes. You got a handful of lots, and I don't know that that's the. I think you got to let the free market sort of handle that area. I don't think that the town is coming in there getting involved in that little tiny section of trying to. I think that's an overreach of government. If you're in there trying to mandate what happens on individual lots, I don't think that that's the place of government. I think when you talk about some overall general long term planning for things that are maintainable and scalable, that's where government works, but government shouldn't be in there in each person's backyard. I think that's a wrong move.
I mean, in different neighborhoods besides the Old Village, where can you put those single family homes?
Um, I don't. There's not a whole lot of green space left out there, Quentin. When you talk about the bridge side of that side, once you get 526 back to the big bridge, I mean, you're just talking about little pockets here and there. And I mean, there's a little bit of redevelopment. I like the idea of urban infill. I like the idea of this project. I think came under some heat. There's a townhouse complex right off Coleman Boulevard, as you're coming in right before you get to Shem Creek,
Right.
and that guy got a lot of heat for tearing down the townhouses there, and he's going to come back and build something better. But I think that that's actually smart. I think that's a smart move. He took something that has been there. It didn't have historical significance or value or anything like that. He didn't encroach on anything new. He didn't take up any more space. He used the space that he had and said, "Hey, I'm going to build something back that's better." And it's probably more in line with the community in the area over there, as that area has grown and changed. And I think you got to encourage some stuff like that, instead of encouraging a lot of sprawl. Maybe you do something like that, and you add a second story on a building or something like that. So you're doing a little urban infill instead of expanding your footprint.
Where else in Mount Pleasant can you actually do that ideally?
I do not have a map of all the areas like that. There's probably some master developer out there, and he's doing like this, and maybe has them all counted up. But I couldn't tell you all the different places. But again, I think that as government, there's a limitation of what your reach should be, and 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 you got to not have your hand right in somebody's backyard or right in somebody's back pocket and trying to tell them how to live life. I think you got to set up somewhat of a level playing field and do some basic things to protect quality of life. But we still are living a free America, and I'm not going to be the guy on town council that's trying to get inside everybody's hair and tell them exactly how they need to live their life. That would be totally disingenuous to who I am.
Jordan Bryngelson, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close Ups.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was a good conversation.
Thank you.